obviously over the last, what is it, 60 minutes now, we've just
Yeah.
had a one-to-one workshop where we've run through what to do after the program. So I think for 99% of men, they tend to struggle with support and accountability once they sort of graduate from a health and fitness program. And the reason being is they don't have the tools or the knowledge to be able to go away and do it on their own. But of course, we just spent the last 60 minutes sort of mapping it out, looking at a fat loss phase, how we then transition to a maintenance phase, all of the intricate details, the number of steps, perhaps how much food you should be consuming, looking at meal frequency, looking at set volume, looking at training frequency as a whole, and then how you then transition into a muscle building phase. But what would you say the biggest takeaway was from that one-to-one workshop?
Um, I think it's just having a better understanding around the formulas that can support around like your kind of your fat loss and then also around that the muscle gain, right? So I think a lot of that knowledge provided is probably something that, as you say, 99% of people don't know. So and once you have it, I guess it's definitely a tool to help you track better. So in terms of what you're putting in your body, macronutrients wise, or calorie wise, depending on what phase you're at during kind of your path, whether it's your weight loss or your fat loss, sorry, or your muscle build. So that's probably like the biggest takeaway, the most standout takeaway from it.
Awesome. Aaron, for anyone watching who obviously doesn't know you, I know who you are. We've been working
Yeah.
together over the last couple of weeks, right? I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, what you do for work.
Yeah, so I'm currently based in Suffolk, Ipswich, as an assistant head of rugby. So my job obviously is term time based. So it can be very busy during term time, and then completely the end of the scale, kind of when school's not happening. So very active 6 days a week. I also have a little one that lives in Belfast, so that's 2 weekends a month of travel that I fly to, so I fly for. Um, with also my partner who's left Suffolk to return back up north. So there is also that travel as well. So yeah, I kind of spread out around the UK quite a bit.
That's definitely something I can relate to because when we first started working together, the fact that you said Belfast, right? My mother is from Belfast. Not that I sound Irish, but when I was a youngster, I kind of had this like Irish twang, like top of the morning to you. And I used to have like my grandparents say like, "We'll smack your wee arse." So I guess that was something like I kind of like was related to when we first started working together. But it was interesting to me because you mentioned that obviously you were traveling to see your boy. Pretty much bi-weekly. You
Yeah.
traveled over from the UK over to Belfast for the weekend, sort of like Friday to Monday. Is that right?
Friday to Sunday most of the times. Yeah, it could be depending on again half terms how it changes. So it could be Saturday to Monday. It could be Sunday to Tuesday. So there is a little bit of variety in that.
Yeah. So I mean, like your routine was super sporadic, and we had to sort of filter in how we navigated nutrition whilst you're away, even with like the dairy as well, which we'll get into. But what was your lifestyle and relationship with sort of your training, your nutrition, your weight like before we started working together?
Yeah, so I guess it started probably when rugby was kind of starting to phase out of my life. So instead of playing at a decent level, that kind of was phasing out due to work, due to probably age as well to a degree. So then my routine was starting to go. So when we first connected, it was well, I was considerably heavier than I am now, and yeah, in terms of energy levels were poor. The way I looked and felt about myself was poor. As I said, it was probably the worst condition in my life based on the fact that sport was always been a big part of it, and being able to train and be physically active throughout my job was the norm. So yeah, moving up and down. So moving from Manchester to Suffolk with my family was a little bit different. I then kind of got in this bit of a rut where it was easy to just make excuses around like I'm not, and what do I need to be fit for? Because I don't have or necessarily wasn't playing at the standard where I needed to be fit for it, if that makes sense. So yeah, no, not great. So as I said, energy low, fatigue, sleep probably wasn't great, stressed in terms of obviously like the mental side it takes out of traveling quite a lot frequently because my job as well means on Saturdays we play fixtures up to 2-3 hours away, so it's quite a lot of travel throughout my week before I even hit Belfast.
And what made you realize that you needed to make a change?
What made me realize a couple of things, like genuinely looking at myself, like going on holiday is something that I really like to do, getting away I like to do, um, not great. It doesn't help when the kids at school, the students at school call you Porky, or the large t-shirts are no longer fitting anymore. There's quite a few things really. I think I've also always wanted to be someone that is quite sporty, and I want my
Yeah.
son to be very similar because I think sport, regardless if you're professional or not, it brings so much socially, right, and physically. So, I've always have a like almost like a small goal to myself where I want to be as quick and as fit
Yeah.
as long as possible, or I want to be better than my son for as long as possible before that takes over.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember we talked about this on your initial diagnostic call. Remind me where you went on holiday before we jumped on that call.
Well, I went to Rhodes.
That was it,
Yeah, that
Rhodes.
one. Yeah,
With
yeah,
the family, right? With your partner's family.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. With
So
my partner's family. Yeah,
I remember on that initial health diagnostic call, we were talking about identity shifts and like how you were so orientated around rugby to the point where like everything was pretty much structured. It was in routine. You pretty much like had goals and aspirations sort of around that. And then since, over the last couple of years, that identity shift started to change because you had more responsibilities. You got a partner, you've got a mortgage, you've got a little one, and like sort of your separation with rugby then meant like your physique started to sort of deteriorate as well. Take us through the last 8 weeks. What was the experience like for you in terms of weight
yes,
loss, in terms of energy? Just kind of bring us up to speed. Obviously, I know what you've managed to achieve,
yeah,
but just for those who are watching, just give them an insight into what you have managed to achieve over the last eight
yeah.
weeks.
So I guess the last 8 weeks, I'm somewhere near 5 kilograms down. But even before that, so when I was in Rhodes, so as we just spoke about, like I think I was actually 102.7. And then obviously by the time when we that was, by the time that we are here now, I'm kind of like mid 95. So there's actually a bit more than that 5 kg over kind of a 9-10 week period. But yeah, for the last kind of 8 weeks, we're roughly around the 8 kg mark. Yeah, so it's kind of put me on track in terms of allowing me to be more disciplined around what I'm eating, understanding the foods that I'm putting in. So there was a massive, and that's probably from a say lazy perspective. We'll use lazy for the sake of it. That I could have made myself more knowledgeable about the foods that I've put in. Um, Whereas I probably thought it was not that bad for me, and actually not that bad. Plus, not that bad becomes bad, right? So that was kind of the process. Whereas, like, yeah, definitely more discipline around what I'm eating naturally now. Like, even if I didn't track my food, I feel like I have an understanding of how much food roughly things weigh, or how much roughly or carbohydrates in this potato or whatever it is might be. So that's become obviously an education for me, which is huge. Um, so yeah, again, my sleeping's been better. Some of the progress pictures you see over the 8 weeks, where bags under the eyes have started to go. Uh, More body fat's come has left my stomach. Like you're starting to see some shape and some definition around kind of my physique, which is great.
How did you find fitting the nutrition and training around your normal life?
So I believe it was just created, as I said, a little bit of structure. So the the best thing is about as you say to everyone, I'm sure around the preparation, right? So having a bit of structure around when you're training and having some consistency was good, and then when which was kind of a good time when I kind of phased out of work. It was obviously easier to um, train. It was easier to find more time to train, and then it was obviously easier to prep and obviously plan those things that I was eating across the week. Um, but yeah, definitely when we first started, when you're in the middle of it, again, it's probably the support you gave around the things to eat, which became simplifying meals, and then the training programs that obviously just help and allow you to tick things off, which just gives you a little bit of structure across your week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we start with the assessment week, right? Uh, the thing that doesn't sit well with me is that for the majority of sort of individuals that invest in some sort of online coaching or personal training program is the fact that they don't get an assessment week, and the coach will actually just build their plan out based on their forms that they filled out. And the reason that doesn't sit well with me is because you're very much your own individual. I like to get to know my clients on a personal level, and I like to know what they like and what they dislike. But also, that assessment week bridges the gap between the actual program to see what you can do versus what you can't do. And initially, we didn't actually look at calories and macros. We just looked at your meal frequency. We looked at what you were eating. We were highlighting weaknesses, and then over time, we start to see like the gaps. How much protein you were eating, how much fat you were eating, how much carbohydrate you were eating, the types of food that you were eating, as well as the total calories that you're consuming across the day when you had sort of energy dips as well. And the beauty of that is that assessment week then gave us the data to then put out your metabolic meal plan, right? And once we then had that, I know you mentioned obviously the 7Ps, proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. That assessment week just allows us to create that little bit of routine, that little bit of structure to see what you've been doing all your life essentially compared to
Yeah.
actually starting something which is brand new, it's fresh, and just kind of give you the tools, the knowledge, and the skill set around that as well. So, was there a particular point where you realized that this is actually working?
Um, so during kind of, I guess before that, I was seeing my weight plus 100, which is like never really been around that weight. So um, when I started to drop below that, and I guess the progress pictures helped as well. Like so, you can see differences. I think like again, some of the knowledge and descriptions you kind of given me around the progress that was made week to week, which obviously helps. So there was probably not a massive point where I thought, that was the moment I know it was working. I think it was more so that it was seeing the consistency throughout, and my mindset changes when I realized it was working, if that makes sense. So I don't have a specific point, but when it becomes second nature, I think that's when it is starting to kick in, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I would argue that is the point. The fact that you've got a mindset shift, and when consistency becomes the element of the result, beyond the weight loss, what other changes have you noticed then in your confidence, in your energy, or even day to day life? I know that you mentioned obviously the bags, right?
Yeah.
Um, Run me through that.
Um, yeah, look, I think over time you obviously get more confident in terms of the shape. I think obviously everyone likes a bit of praise, so like you've seen, like as in my partner, colleagues have noticed the weight loss and seen it. That's always great to hear. So yeah, it does give you kind of confidence back. You start to feel more energetic. Um, like waking up as early doesn't feel as early as it first did. Um, eating the right food just puts you feel like you're in a better place. Like I struggled with bloating quite a lot, so and making sure I'm putting the right foods in me to prevent that bloating from happening, or the amounts of food I'm eating, whether that
Yeah,
means I'm going to 4 meals rather than 3 meals. And yeah, like again, the knowledge is super important, right? So when I'm at school, or when I had been at school, I'd get school meals paid for, but I actually don't know what's in those school meals. So removing kind of yourself from that, and knowing what exactly you put in day to day definitely helps that progress.
yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me is actually talking about ingredients with you and talking about digestion as a whole, because you could start eating healthy foods, but if your absorption is not optimal, then you're not actually absorbing the essential vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients that your body needs. And kind of the biggest sort of thing for me, and when I realized this about you in terms of the bloating, was we were talking about lactose. We were talking about, what should I be eating when I'm in Belfast? What should I be eating, when I'm, traveling around with my boy? And we started to look at sort of like yogurts, if you remember.
Yeah.
And you said, that doesn't sit well with me. I'm sort of it's the lactose sort of thing. And we started to get into the lac operon gene and how individuals, it's very scientific, but the lac operon gene, if someone doesn't have a lac operon gene, they simply cannot digest lactose. And that was kind of like pivotal for me because it then allowed me to sort of see where you had digestion issues, sort of the foods that we can implement within your metabolic meal plan to ensure that digestion is on point, absorption is on point, but alongside that, you're losing body fat as well. So I guess if you were to compare yourself now to the person, who started a few months back, what would you say the biggest difference is for you?
Um, Obviously, the weight loss is a big difference. Which again, without being specific around numbers, the visual side of it is super important to me. That, the ability to be able to like my movement now when I'm going back to training, where I play a lot of sevens in the summer, like that weight loss is definitely felt can feel the difference when I'm moving, whether that is like change of direction, whether that is speed work, whether that is, some cardiovascular stuff as well. Like there's a noticeable difference in terms of performance. So that's super important to me. Um, yeah, that's probably the hopefully I answered the question and
Yeah, you
didn't
did
ramble
most
on.
definitely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess if
Uh,
someone was watching this back, right,
yeah.
who was in the exact same position that you were a few months
Yeah.
back, they were overweight, they were tired, they were lethargic, they were fatigued. They've got a lot on their plate. They're not sure how to track calories. They're not sure how to design a meal plan or perhaps track macronutrients. They're not sure how to train specifically, and they often find themselves sort of falling off.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Um, Well, I forgot to mention in the last question was, one of the main things to kind of support that was obviously the structure that kind of brought discipline with it as well. So just thought I'd throw that in there whilst I remember. But with regards to those things, it's not everyone is out there to gain, right? So what I mean by that, there are people out there that are happy to support. And before the program, like you gave me some really good information that helped me support certain things, and we had some conversations away from any detail or data, which, like as I said, so like there are good people out there that will help you, right? But once you get that advice, you've got to be in the position or the mindset to take the advice and go along with it. So. Um, there's no point having the knowledge if you can't implement it. And although it gets a bit tough, if it gets a bit tough, use people to help you track in terms of your success, or talk to people in terms of making sure they keep you accountable. And yeah, look, and I think it takes a couple of weeks. It took a couple of weeks before becoming more disciplined. But once you get past that phase, and it is a short phase, if you compare it to our lifespan, it's a short phase. It definitely becomes easier.
Yeah, 100%. Once you have that foundation, that's what I call clean the palette phase one. You almost build up brick by brick, layer by layer, and the cement between each brick is going to be the changes that are subjective to you. Whether you're drinking 3 to 4 liters of water, whether you're taking your supplements, whether you're going out for your steps, all of these intricate things of what build you and define you. So, Aaron, would you recommend Fit Coach and working with myself?
Yeah, of course. As I said, like the three main things for me really from taking away from it was, and again, you won't know this because it's not a data thing. Like generally, the conversations we had before joining the program, or even thought about the program, was based around just you being a good person, sharing some information and some knowledge. And then once I was on the program, again, just having that support to continue progress. And as I said, the structure has helped to create discipline. So, and I'm getting to a point now where I'm in better shape, which is not only helping me, I guess, socially, being more confident or feeling better, which is the main one, but also like back to a performance situation. So, knowing that I haven't got long left in the sport, but actually being at a good weight is definitely gonna help prolong it.
For sure, man. And I just want to say I really appreciate your time tonight. And I really appreciate all of your hard work that you've put into the program over the last couple of months. It definitely doesn't go unnoticed. And from sort of a coaching perspective, I've been in rooms with hundreds, even thousands of online coaches and personal trainers, all that go through different mentorships. And what you might not know is that some of these coaching programs, they're fantastic, okay, and definitely relatable. And those are the guys that you kind of want to move towards. But also, there's coaches out there which are just trying to make a quick sale. And what doesn't sit well with me is the fact that they're pushing that, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on TikTok, they're just trying to filter people in to get that quick sale, and they sort of treat them as a number. And I guess the biggest difference for me, and I know that I mentioned this on our one-to-one workshop before we jumped into sort of this YouTube video, was the fact that I want to make sure that you've got the tools, the knowledge, and the skill set to do this for life. Whether you're looking to get, advice on Instagram, it's always there. Regardless, if you've got any sort of previous experience, it's always there. And I think just having that conversation with you on a personal level, actually getting to know my clients on a personal level, is really what drives the result. It's not necessarily the plan that we give you. Of course, it's very subjective, it's very intricate, and it's designed for you specifically. If anybody else tries it, it's not going to work for them. But it's more so it's person orientated. I always put the person first before the plan, because what might work for you may not work for somebody else. So just trying random workout programs or random diet plans, it's not going to work. What does work is actually understanding that person on a human level and then designing it around that. So yeah, we'll always continue to do that. If for anybody that's watching this right now and sort of you're on fence with online coaching, just drop me a message. Let's have a chat. It doesn't even have to be about the coaching program. It could be specifically about your goals. Aaron and I had a pretty good chinwag actually for a good couple of weeks talking about like snacks, sugary snacks in the kitchen, and how like I can empathize because yeah, even my partner leaves them around. We make a little bit of a joke of it. If you've ever seen sort of Alice in Wonderland, I think I mentioned this to you on our initial health diagnostic call, but Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter's tea party, at around 9 or 10 o'clock every single night, she'll always have cake or some sort of sweet with a biscuit. And it's like, damn, I'm watching that sort of thing. Am I going to have that as well? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. But the reality is, as long as you are person orientated, you understand what you need to do to be able to move forward, to lose body fat, to build muscle. That is what matters in my eyes. Perhaps you can relate with the Mad Hatter tea party with the snacks sort of being around the house and whatnot. But Aaron, thank you so much for your time once again. I will send you over your one-to-one workshop details. And for anybody else that's thinking about online coaching, they don't want to have the chat, you just want to jump straight into how the program actually works. All of the details are in the caption. If you want to book in a health diagnostic call, you can go ahead and book it in below. Or if you want any more information about how the coaching program works, you can DM me the word metabolic on Instagram, and I'll send you over a roadmap of our 5-phase metabolic system. Thank you very much, and take care.
Appreciate you, bro. Take care.